Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about a guy you've probably never heard of, but whose work, well, you're using it every single day. His name is Jürgen Schmidhuber. Okay, so when someone like Elon Musk says something that bold, you kind of have to stop and ask, who is this person, and what in the world did he invent to get that kind of praise? Well, the New York Times has called him the father of artificial intelligence. But believe it or not, his personal mission, one he's had since he was just 15, is actually pretty simple. Build an AI that's smarter than he is, and then, retire. So where do we actually see his work in action? Well, to really get a grip on his impact, let's start with the big one, the name everyone knows, ChatGPT. Now, I know what you're thinking. ChatGPT feels like it just came out of nowhere, right? But what's absolutely wild is that the core ideas behind two of these letters, the P for pre-trained and the T for transformer, they actually go all the way back to Schmidhuber's lab in the early 90s. Yeah, the 90s. And this is really the blueprint, the DNA for modern AI. You've got pre-training, which is like making the AI read the entire internet before you give it a specific job. Then you have transformers, which is the magic that helps it understand not just words, but the context around them. And even before that, there was something called LSTM, which basically gave AI a memory. Put them all together, and bam, you have the recipe for the AI revolution. And if you want to talk about scale, get this. By 2017, long before ChatGPT was a household name, technology from his lab was already powering 4 times billion translations a day, just on Facebook. That's insane. But, whenever you have work this big, this game-changing, controversy is almost always right around the corner. And it usually comes down to one thing: who gets the credit? So, flash forward to 2024. Geoffrey Hinton gets a Nobel Prize. He's being called a godfather of AI. So, what did the original pioneer, Schmidhuber, have to say about that? He did not mince words. He basically called the prize a joke and straight up said it was for plagiarism. His argument? That the really important stuff in modern AI didn't even come from Hinton. So here's his beef. He says the real pioneers, guys from Ukraine and Japan back in the 60s and 70s, were the ones who did the foundational work. And he claims they weren't cited, which, as you can imagine, kicked off this huge debate about who really wrote the history of deep learning. Okay, so setting aside the drama and the arguments for a second, Schmidhuber also has this really unique and frankly pretty provocative vision for where all of this is going. He has this great analogy. He says AI is like the discovery of fire. Sure, it's got huge upsides, warmth, cooking, protection, but it also has risks, right? It can burn you, it can be a weapon, but ultimately, its advantages are so massive that it just pushes humanity forward. That's how he sees AI. So, what does this mean for your job, for your career? Well, his prediction is probably not what you'd expect. He thinks we're heading for a golden age for manual trades, plumbers, electricians, people who work with their hands. Why? Because no robot can do what they do. Yet, at the same time, a lot of traditional desk jobs, the knowledge work, he thinks those are going to be completely transformed. And then there's the big one, right? Consciousness. Is AI going to become conscious? For Schmidhuber, it's not some deep, mystical thing. He sees it as, well, almost an accidental byproduct. Think about it. If an AI has to learn how to operate in the world, it needs to predict what will happen when it does something. To do that, it has to have a model of itself. That constant self-reference, he says that's basically what consciousness is. It's not magic, it's just logic. Okay, but all of that, it all leads to what is probably his most mind-bending prediction. It's based on a pattern he says he's found that spans billions of years of history. So Schmidhuber noticed something incredible. The time between these huge milestones in history, from the start of life to controlled fire to civilization to the digital age, it keeps shrinking. And it shrinks by a factor of 4 every single time. If you follow that math, that exponential curve, it points to what he calls a convergence point. And it lands in the year 2042. So what on earth does that mean, to live on the edge of a convergence point? Well, he argues that we are alive right now in what might be the single most important moment in cosmic history, a point where that line of progress, that curve of change, goes almost completely vertical. And here's the takeaway, and it's a staggering one. According to his timeline, the short period between roughly 2029 and 2042, could bring more change, more transformation than the last 13,000 years of civilization. Heck, more than the last 13 billion years of the entire cosmos. And that leaves us with one final, pretty heavy thought. Are we ready for that?